So by now, you've seen almost everyone make a tier list video, but you haven't seen me make a tier list video. I'm a little late to the party. Better late than never. Journey before destination. Get it? Because the Stormlight Archive, the Cosmere. Do you see where I'm going with this? Today, I'll be ranking Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere books, at least the ones that I've read. Now, this is going to be a completely spoiler-free video. I will mention certain characters and aspects that I like and dislike. I'm also going to put up some fan art here and there, but it will be as spoiler-free as I can manage. Now, I don't believe that Sanderson has ever written a D-tier book, so instead of D-tier, I have did not read, because there is some of these that I haven't read yet, starting off with Elantris, which is Brandon Sanderson's very first published book. I've only read about half of it. I ended up putting it down to read Rhythm of War, but I could tell it was Sanderson's first book. It was a little bit rough around the edges. I do want to go back and finish it at some point. I did like the premise. I loved the setting. I was actually listening to the graphic audio version of Elantris, which I would definitely recommend over just the regular audiobook. So I didn't read The Hope of Elantris yet either. Warbreaker, I would probably put at B tier. Warbreaker is a very underrated Cosmere book. It's not my favorite, but I do really like it. There's a lot of great political intrigue, there's a lot of humorous banter, and of course the magic system of biochromatic breath is just amazing. I love the use of color in Warbreaker as well. The ending did fall a little bit flat for me. There's certain things I would have liked to have seen it done better. I love the banter between Blushweaver and Lightsong. I love Vasher and Nightblood. Anyway, I do feel like it's a good starting point for people getting into the Cosmere since it is a standalone, though I know Sanderson apparently is going to be working on a sequel, so I'm excited for that. The Emperor's Soul, for me, is S tier. I just read it recently, actually, and it is one of my favorite novellas I've read. To me, it's a great example of Sanderson's writing at its best. And I think it's also a great place to start off in the Cosmere, because you don't really need to read anything else. You can just start with The Emperor's Soul. It's nice and quick, and it's one of his best. I actually need to make a full dedicated review at some point. Next is Mistborn, The Final Empire. Now this is the very first Brandon Sanderson book I ever read, and I kind of love it. I think I'm gonna put it at S tier. It just has such a unique vibe to it. It takes a while to build up. This first book has a lot of world building. It's got to explain the magic system to you, so it does take a little while to get rolling, but then once it does, I just couldn't put this book down. I love Vin, I love Kelsier, I really like the whole crew. This is the book that asks the question, what if the Dark Lord won? Then there's the Well of Ascension, which comes in with the idea of what do you do after you defeat the Dark Lord. And I think I would probably rank this one as A tier. The first book was just such an amazing introduction for me. That's why it's S tier. This one, it did have some slower parts. It did have a lot more political intrigue, which I did like. I can't remember if this is the one with the whole spook subplot, because I actually did like that. The ending to this book was fantastic, but I'm still gonna put it at A tier. And then The Hero of Ages. Now, a lot of people are mixed when it comes to the ending with The Hero of Ages. Personally, I loved it. There was some other things in the book that kind of slowed it down. I was a little bit annoyed with Sazed in this one, but I would put it above the Well of Ascension, but probably keep it in A tier. Or maybe S tier. This is difficult. In this one, you really see the ruin and destruction and just an overall mounting sense of despair, and it successfully does that. And then it just kind of blows you away with the ending. But again, not everyone liked the ending. I did. So I don't know if I'd put it at S. You know what? I'm just going to put it at S tier. The 11th Metal is like a short prequel to Mistborn. I don't really remember it being anything too special. I do like seeing more of Kelsier, that was great, but I think I'm actually just gonna put this one at C, because it just didn't really stand out to me. And Mistborn, A Secret History, I actually really liked. Now, a lot of people have mixed opinions on this one. I'm probably gonna put it at B, below Warbreaker. Now, I actually read it at the wrong time because you're supposed to read it after the Bands of Mourning. I read it right after finishing the original Mistborn trilogy, but that didn't really bother me much. I should probably reread it at some point, but I love all the Cosmere connections in that. Next is the Alloy of Law, the first Wax and Wane book, aka Mistborn Era 2. Now, this one I liked. It was just fun, but it wasn't that strong. It had a lot of just Western cliches just kind of thrown in there. The main antagonist seemed like a pretty stereotypical villain. I'm gonna put it at the C tier. The Shadows of Self, on the other hand, I feel like that picks up a lot. I was a little underwhelmed with the first one, but this one has like a big leap in quality. I feel like Wane wasn't as annoying, Wax was more enjoyable, Steris became such a good character. Also just the plot in general and the world just got a lot more interesting. I'm gonna put this one maybe actually in front of Warbreaker if it will move. There we go. And then the Bands of Mourning I actually haven't read yet. I did read Alamancor Jack. That was kind of just like a funny parody of 19th century adventure stories, but it didn't really like stick out to me too much, so I'm just gonna put it at C tier. The Way of Kings. The Way of Kings was such a good introduction to a series. It does take a while for a new reader to get into it because it has a prelude and a prologue, and then the first chapter isn't even from the main characters or one of the main characters' perspectives, so it takes a while to get there. But I remember being just so immersed in the story. The whole introduction with Szeth was like one of the best introductions to a magic system, I think. And then the whole journey with Kaladin and Bridge 4, that's still one of my favorite parts of the Stormlight Archive. But I think I am going to put it at A tier. Wait a minute, if I'm putting it at A tier, the Hero of Ages should probably come down to A tier. Oh, I can't make up my mind. The Way of Kings has so many of those moments that make you just want to stand up and cheer. Actually, a lot of the books in the Stormlight Archive, pretty much all of them, have moments like that. But I'm gonna put it at the top of A tier, and then Words of Radiance is going to be S tier, because to me, Words of Radiance is the best written Stormlight Archive book. It's paced out really well. It has a ton of just badass moments, and all of my favorite characters get some really great scenes. And then moving on to Oathbringer, I know I've said before that Oathbringer is like my favorite Stormlight book, but I know that Words of Radiance is the better book. There's just some things in Oathbringer that I love so much. I love Dalinar's arc, I love getting his backstory, but it does have quite a few pacing issues. It's not as well balanced as Words of Radiance. I think I would put this one above The Way of Kings. If you would, there you go. Please obey me, tier list. And then Rhythm of War. If you watched my spoiler-free review, you'll know my thoughts on Rhythm of War. It was my least favorite Stormlight book that I've read. It does have some really great moments. The beginning to it was really fast-paced. It had such a great intro, but then a lot of it takes place in the same setting that the third book did. And a lot of the characters didn't have as strong of an arc as previous books. There were some touching moments. There's tons of Cosmere reveals, which I loved. But it was still my least favorite. I felt like Sanderson kind of rushed it a bit, and I know I'm probably gonna get some hate comments from that, but I will probably put it way over here. Next we have Edge Dancer, which a lot of people are mixed on because a lot of people don't really like Lift. I'm kind of in the middle. I don't hate Lift, but she can be annoying, and I like her more so as a side character, which is why this novella wasn't really the best for me. I do feel like it got better near the end of the novella, and it also didn't feel like it's necessary. You don't have to read it. You will miss like some small details, but it's not super important, but I think I would put it above the 11th medal. Then Dawn Shard, I really enjoyed. This is one where I feel like you definitely should read it before reading Rhythm of War, because there is some big Cosmere implications in this one. I loved getting more of Rissyn and the Lopin. They're pretty much front and center in this novella, and I really enjoyed it. So I think I would place this over Where would I put it? I guess I would put it below Warbreaker. Shadows for Silence in the Forest of Hell, I did not read that one yet. Sixth of Dusk, I did read, and I really like Sixth of Dusk, how it doesn't romanticize like the clash between colonialism and indigenous societies. I felt like it handled that really well. Overall, I think it's a pretty decent novella. Oh, you know what? I'm not gonna rank Arcanum Unbounded because we already ranked a lot of stories that are in it. So White Sand. All we got left is White Sand, and I have read all 3 volumes, and they're decent. They're not the best graphic novels. They're definitely not the best example of Brandon Sanderson's storytelling and writing. I would probably put all 3 of them at C tier. I still am glad that I read them, but they're nothing too special. They're expensive. You can read the unfinished novel version of White Sand, I believe for free on Sanderson's website. I haven't read that yet. I'd probably just do that instead of get the graphic novels because they're not really anything special. You know what? After looking at my list, I thought I would have a lot more in the S tier, so I think I'm actually just gonna bump The Way of Kings up there because it was such an amazing introduction. I just had finished reading the Mistborn trilogy, then I started The Way of Kings, and I immediately felt just a jump in quality as far as just the writing and just how epic in scope this story is. Oh, and I just realized I have Mistborn ahead of them as well, so I have to do some reorganizing because, man, okay, I think that is good. Well, okay. Okay, now it's good. Okay, so that's my ranking of Sanderson's Cosmere books. Let me know how you would rank these books down in the comments, and let me know if there's any other tier list you want me to do, because this was actually a lot of fun.